Hello everyone, welcome to the new video of Data Analytics. Today's video is about exploratory factor analysis. In this video we have to cover how to run exploratory factor analysis, what are the steps needed for it, and how to interpret the result of exploratory factor analysis. The exploratory factor analysis is used for Likert scale items. Here the Likert scale items are affordability, applicability, accessibility, availability and accountability and acceptability is used for measuring adoption level of ICT. Then why exploratory factor analysis? In order to identify the underlying factor structure and reduce the dimensions or explore the relationship and validate the scale. In order to validate the scale adoption level, we have here used exploratory factor analysis. Move to the steps. Analyze, dimension reduction, factor. From the left side, we have to select all the statements of all the components of adoption level. First, the affordability, all the statements are selected and move to the right side. And regarding applicability, selected and move to the right side. Then accessibility, selected and move to the right side. And again availability. Thereafter accountability, and finally acceptability. There are 6 components are used to measure adoption level. All the statements are selected and moved to the right side. And from the descriptives, here the factor analysis descriptives, from the statistics plot we have to select univariate descriptives. From the correlation matrix, we have to select KMO and Bartlett test of sphericity. In this dialog box, we have to select 3 items: univariate descriptives, initial solution, KMO and Bartlett test of sphericity. Continue. Thereafter, in the extraction method, the principal component method is selected. There are different methods are used to extract the components: principal component analysis, unweighted least square, generalized least square, maximum likelihood, principal axis factoring, alpha factoring, image factoring. Here the most appropriate method is principal component analysis. From the display format, we have to select unrotated factor solution and also the scree plot. Furthermore, it is very important to define the extraction method, that is, either it is based on eigenvalue which is greater than 1 or fixed number of factors, that is the number of factors to extract. Here I have selected the eigenvalue which is greater than 1. Thereafter, again continue. The next dialog box is rotated matrix or rotation method. Here the methods are Varimax rotation, direct oblimin method, Coty-Max method, Equamax method, Promax method. Here we have to select the Varimax method. After selecting the Varimax method, the display should be rotated solution. Then continue. Thereafter, the next one is options. In this option, we have to select the coefficient display format, that is suppress small coefficient. That means the coefficient should have to be shown, that is greater than 0.40. This absolute value below 0.40 should have to be suppressed. Then continue. These are all the steps of exploratory factor analysis. Then click OK. Yes, we have got the result of exploratory factor analysis. First, we can see that the descriptive statistics table. that is mean, standard deviation and number of factors. Thereafter, the result of KMO and Bartlett test of sphericity. Here we can see that the KMO value, Kaiser-Mayen-Olkin measure of sample adequacy, that is 0.909. Bartlett test of sphericity, there are three values: approximate chi-square value 4713, degree of freedom 630, significance value 0.000. Then the next important column is communalities, and here we can see that the initial communalities for all the statements are 1 and the extracted communalities are 0.905 and corresponding to all the statements from the value of 0.7 to 0.9. Next, the very important table is total variance explained. Here we can see that there are 6 components are derived for the analysis of adoption level. And the first component has eigenvalue of 17.379. Second component has 4.566. Third component has the eigenvalue of 3.125. Fourth component has the eigenvalue of 2.527. Fifth and sixth component has eigenvalue of greater than 1, that is 0.187 and 1.445 respectively. And the percentage of variance explained for the adoption level. The first component explained 42.27% of variance in the adoption level. Second component explained 12.68% of variance in the adoption level. Third component also explained 8.68% of variance in the adoption level. And fourth component also explained 7.02% of variance in the adoption level. Fifth and sixth components also explained 5.20%, 4.01% of variance in the adoption level. And this is the cumulative percentage of variance explained. Regarding the 6 components, there are 85.881% of total variance explained for the adoption level. And moving to the next scree plot. This is the result of scree plot. Here we express the values of eigenvalue for different components. And the first eigenvalue is 17 point something, and then it is 4 point something, then it is 3 point something, and 2 point something, 1 point something, and again 1 point something. And these are all below 1 point. And here we can see that 6 components are derived which has greater than 1 eigenvalue for representing the adoption level. And we have to explain the rotated component matrix, not component matrix, because the rotated component matrix is done with the varimax rotation. That is variance maximization method. Here we can see that rotated component matrix, there are 5 statements are used to measure the component affordability, which has the factor loading which is above 0.7. And also regarding the applicability, there are 7 statements are used to measure applicability, and which has also the factor loading which is greater than 0.7. Again, regarding accessibility, all the statements have factor loading greater than 0.7. And also regarding availability, all the statements have factor loading above 0.8. And regarding accountability, all the statements have factor loading greater than 0.7. And regarding acceptability, all the statement has factor loading greater than 0.7. Then we have to interpret the result of exploratory factor analysis. Yes, this is the interpretation I have made for measuring the scales of adoption level and also validate the scale of adoption level. Here in the first paragraph, we have to introduce the exploratory factor analysis. Exploratory factor analysis needs certain assumption to be fulfilled, namely correlation and sample adequacy. The KMO Bartlett test includes Bartlett test of sphericity that measure multivariate normality of the variables in addition to analyze whether the correlation matrix is an identity matrix. Kaiser-Mehan-Oaklin test can measure whether the sample is adequate for conducting factor analysis. The citation is George and Paul Marley, 1999. Exploratory factor analysis using principal component method with varimax rotation is applied for analyzing the factor structure and association between 36 statements including in the scale adoption level. Here there are 36 statements are used to measure the scale adoption level. The results are presented below. First of all, we have to look for the interpretation of result of KMO and Bartlett test of adoption level. And here KMO and Bartlett test of adoption level shows the KMO value of 0.909. Bartlett test of sphericity shows the approximate chi-square value of 4713, degree of freedom of 630, significance value of 0.000. The principal component analysis is done with 36 statements with varimax rotation. The Kaiser-Mehan-Oaklin measure authenticate the sample adequacy for the analysis. KMO value of 0.909 which is above the recommended limit of 0.70. Bartlett test is another sign of strength of relationship among the variables. Bartlett test of sphericity chi-square is equal to 4713 and the significance value which is less than 0.01 which shows the connection between the item is sufficiently large for principal component analysis. An initial analysis is run to get the eigenvalue of each component in the data. 6 components have eigenvalue which is greater than Kaiser criterion of 1 and the combination explained 85.881% of variance. This is the second table, communalities of adoption level scale. Here component and statement are in the first column, initial communalities in the second column and extracted communalities in the third column. Here we can see that different components, adoption level, applicability, accessibility, availability, accountability and acceptability. Here we can see that all the communalities value of affordability which is greater than 0.70 and applicability also which is greater than 0.70 and accessibility which is above 0.8 and this is also 0.8 and regarding accountability the values are also 0.7 and finally acceptability has the communality values of 0.7. Here we can conclude that communalities represent the proportion of variance in the variable shared with other variables through extracted components. It indicates how well the components and statements explain the variable adoption level. Here the communalities are around 0.7 to 0.9, hence there is moderate to well representation of components and statement to the concerned variable. Accordingly, these components are satisfactorily considered for the measurement of adoption level. Further, the result of exploratory factor analysis are given below. This is the third table, result of exploratory factor analysis, that is adoption level. Here these columns are first the constructs for measuring adoption level, then the different statements, then the code of the statements and factor loading of each statement, eigenvalue of the component and variance explained of the component. And regarding affordability, there are 5 statements are used and the codes are AF1, AF2, AF3, AF4 and AF5. The factor loading of first statement 0.948 and second statement 0.95 and third statement 0.943, fourth statement 0.935 and the last statement is 0.945. The eigenvalue of all this component is that 17.371 which is greater than 1. 48.276% of variance in the adoption level is measured with the help of affordability. And moving to the applicability, there are 7 statements are used to measure applicability and which has shown the code that is AP1 to AP7 and this factor loadings are greater than 0.70 and the eigenvalue is 4.566 which is greater than 1 and also The applicability is explaining 12.683% of variance in the adoption level. And moving to the accessibility, there are 6 statements are used to measure accessibility, and we have coded as AC1 to AC6, and all the statement have factor loading which is greater than 0.70, and the eigenvalue is 3.125 which is greater than 1, and the accessibility is also explaining the variance of adoption level which is 8.680%. Moving to the next component, that is availability. Again, this is explaining for measuring 6 statements, and the codes are AV1 to AV6, and this is also explaining the factor loading which is greater than 0.80, and the eigenvalue is 2.527 which is greater than 1, and also this component explaining 7.021% of variance in the adoption level. Moving to the accountability, and here also 6 statements are used to measure accountability, and the codes are ACN1 to ACN6, and these all statements are having the factor loading of 0.70 or above, and the eigenvalue is 1.875, and which explaining 5.208% of variance in the adoption level. And the lastly, that is acceptability, which has again 6 statements, and the code is ACP1 to ACP6, and all the statements are having the factor loading of 0.70. The eigenvalue is 1.445 which is greater than 1, and which explaining the variance in adoption level, that is 4.013%, and the total variance explained for all the components, that is 85.881%. Here we have looked for the interpretation. The result of exploratory factor analysis displayed that the solution is based on 6 components, and all the statements are loading on their components. The 6 component solution explains 85.881% of variance in the total variance of adoption level. A total of 5 statements are used or included in the first factor, that is not tangibility, it is affordability. Affordability we have given as the code of AF, and which explaining 48.276% of variance. 7 statements are included in the second factor, that is applicability, and we have shortly known as AP, which elucidates 12.683% of variance. 6 statements are included in the third factor, accessibility, which clarify 9.542% of variance. 6 statements are included in the fourth factor, availability, which enlightens 7.021% of variance. 6 statements are included in the fifth factor, accountability, which explicates 5.208% of variance, and the last 6 statements are included in the sixth factor or the last factor, acceptability, which describes 4.013% of total variance of the adoption level. In total, 6 component solution explaining over 85.881% of total variance explained. This is the figure 1, that is scree plot of exploratory factor analysis adoption level. Here we can see that the scree plot have 6 components derived, which is here shown as in the elbow shape, and which has the eigenvalue of greater than 1. The scree plot exhibits the eigenvalue in the downward curve, ordering the eigenvalue from highest to lowest. According to the plot, elbow of the graph shows there are 6 components which have eigenvalue greater than 1. The values are within the range of 8 to 1. It's not 8 to 1. This is 17 to 1. 17 to 1, and hence 6 factors are explored as an absolute component for measuring adoption level. And this is the result of exploratory factor analysis. Construct validity. The above table, that is table number 3, displays all the factor loading are above 0.40, and the criteria of construct validity, both the discriminant validity and convergent validity is proved. Discriminant validity means loading at least 0.40, no cross loading of item above 0.40. And again the convergent validity, eigenvalue of 1 and loading at least 0.40, item that loaded suggested constructs. That is given by the Strobel et al. Book and in 2004. The result of exploratory factor analysis demonstrate that selected component under the variable adoption level has met the validity requirements. This is the interpretation of exploratory factor analysis. And this video is about how to done exploratory factor analysis and why we used exploratory factor analysis, what are the steps and how to interpret the result. If you have any queries, please comment below. Okay, thank you for watching.